Okay, check this out. Cows drink pee. That was the headline that just, well, it stopped us in our tracks. I mean, Steen's reaction when he saw it was gold, just a flat out, what? That's seriously weird.
Hey, I can imagine. It definitely makes you pause, doesn't it?
It really does. And it gets you thinking, what's the actual story there? Is there something special about, well, pee?
Well, it's funny you mentioned Steen. He actually took that exact bewilderment, that what on earth
Yeah.
reaction, straight to Professor Hendricks during their Nature and Innovation class.
He did. Good old Steen, always wanting to get to the bottom of things, wanted to know what the appeal was for the cows.
And Professor Hendricks, well, he had a really interesting take. Said it probably got nothing to do with taste, surprisingly.
Right, not like they're craving it for flavor.
No, exactly. It's
Yeah.
more likely about necessity. Professor Hendricks explained that urine contains essential salts, nitrogen, other minerals.
Stuff they might be missing.
Precisely. If their diet, maybe the grass in the field they're grazing, is lacking some of these key things, their bodies might just, push them to seek it out,
Yeah.
wherever they can find it.
So it's a survival instinct, basically. Filling a nutritional gap, not some weird bovine habit.
That's the likely explanation, yeah.
Yeah.
It's biology driving them.
And this whole quirky cow thing, it actually leads us perfectly into our main topic today. Why urine is, maybe surprisingly, so valuable. Not necessarily for cows, but for our gardens.
Ah, the liquid gold connection.
Exactly. We started with that headline, right? It sparked the curiosity. And then we've got Professor Hendricks' insights, especially on using urine as fertilizer, how it compares to, like, the chemical stuff you buy.
And also how our own garden waste, the clippings and leaves, fits into the whole nutrient picture.
Yeah. So our mission today really is to dig into the science. What makes urine beneficial for plants? How does it stack up value-wise? And can we even put a DKK figure on it?
Sounds like a plan. Let's dive into this liquid gold.
So Professor Hendricks really zeroed in on nitrogen. So that's the key thing, the main ingredient in urine that plants absolutely love.
That's absolutely right. Nitrogen is, well, it's fundamental, a primary macronutrient. Plants need it for everything green, really.
Like chlorophyll, for making food from sunlight.
Exactly that, photosynthesis. It's crucial for strong stems, healthy leaves, just vigorous growth overall. Without enough nitrogen, plants really struggle.
But there's a catch, isn't there? Professor Hendricks mentioned something about if you just sort of splash fresh urine around the garden.
Ah, yes. The potential downside. If you apply it fresh, directly to the soil, a lot of that valuable nitrogen, which starts as urea, quickly converts to ammonia.
And ammonia, that can just vanish.
It can, yeah. It can evaporate into the air as ammonia gas, which, first off, doesn't smell great.
Hey, probably not.
And second, you're losing the very nutrient you're trying to add. It's inefficient.
Okay, so how do we avoid that? What was the professor's advice?
Two main strategies. One is simple storage. Keep it in a closed container for, say, a few days. Let it stabilize a bit.
Okay.
Or, even better, mix it with something rich in carbon. Think straw, fallen leaves, sawdust, maybe even shredded cardboard.
Right. The carbon combo. Why does that help?
Well, the carbon material basically helps to bind or sort of capture that nitrogen. It provides food for the soil microbes.
The tiny critters in the soil?
Uh-huh. And they then process the nitrogen, making it available to the plant roots in a more stable form, preventing that loss to the air. It kickstarts the whole decomposition process.
He used that analogy, didn't he? Like letting bread dough rise, giving it time and the right conditions.
That's a great way to put it. You're creating the ideal environment for those soil organisms to do their work, transforming the nutrients into something the plants can actually use effectively.
And Kesser, in class, he brought up a good point. He said, hang on, we mammals, we excrete urea, not ammonia directly. So how does that work?
Yeah, that's an important distinction. Our bodies package excess nitrogen as urea, because it's less toxic for us to handle.
Okay.
But once that urine is out, in the soil, exposed to air and moisture, there are enzymes present. Urease is the main one produced by soil microorganisms. And these enzymes rapidly break down the urea into ammonia.
Ah, so the transformation happens in the soil or on the surface.
Correct. And that's the volatile ammonia that we risk losing.
Yay.
So even though we start with urea, it becomes ammonia pretty quickly, which just reinforces why proper handling that storage or mixing with carbon is so crucial to keep the nitrogen locked in.
Got it. Which actually brings us neatly to Justus von Liebig and his famous barrel analogy, Liebig's law of the minimum. Sounds pretty
Oh,
fundamental.
it's huge. Liebig really changed how we understand plant nutrition. His law, in simple terms, says that plant growth isn't limited by the total amount of all nutrients available, but by the nutrient that's in the shortest supply.
The limiting factor.
Exactly. Imagine that barrel made of wooden staves, but the staves are all different lengths. How much water can it hold?
Only up to the level of the shortest stave.
Precisely. So a plant might be swimming in nitrogen, but if it's short on, say, phosphorus or potassium, its growth is going to be limited by that one missing element. You need a balance.
So it's not just about dumping on loads of one thing. Plants need a complete diet, just like us.
Absolutely. And Professor Hendricks added another layer to this. Even if a nutrient is physically present in the soil, it doesn't mean the plant can actually use it.
Ah, the availability issue.
Yes. Nutrient availability. It's like you might have food in the fridge at home, but if you're hungry at school, that food at home isn't doing you much good right now.
Right. Makes sense. So what affects whether plants can actually grab onto those nutrients in the soil?
Several things. Soil pH is a big one. Too acidic or too alkaline.
Yeah.
And certain nutrients get chemically locked up, unavailable.
Okay.
Then there's the whole world of soil life, the microorganisms. They're essential for breaking down organic matter and converting nutrients into forms plants can absorb.
So it's biological too.
Very much so. Plus physical conditions. Enough moisture, but also enough oxygen. The conditions right around the roots. It's a really complex, interconnected system.
Wow. So it's definitely not just simple chemistry. It's this whole living ecosystem under our feet.
That's a perfect way to describe it.
And this kind of loops us back to Steen's cheeky question about calling urine liquid gold. And Professor Hendricks actually went along with it, didn't he? Called it a sort of modern alchemy.
He did. And it's compelling when you think about it that way. Taking something we see as waste, urine, and recognizing its inherent value. It's packed with those essential nutrients plants need.
So the goal isn't the color, obviously, but the value it holds for growth.
Exactly. Value for the plants and value for stimulating all those beneficial processes in the soil ecosystem we just talked about.
And that idea of combining the nitrogen-rich urine with the carbon-rich stuff like leaves or straw, he described it as a kind of transformation, almost like fermentation. Sounds, well, alchemical.
It really does capture that feeling. It's the synergy. The carbon feeds the microbes process the nitrogen, making it plant available. It's this cycle, turning discard into fertility.
The modern garden alchemist, creating food from ourselves in a way.
It's a powerful idea, closing that loop.
Okay, science is fascinating. But Steen, being Steen, wanted numbers. He started calculating the actual, monetary worth of his own contribution.
Yes. Professor Hendricks helped walk through it. Starting with protein intake, how much protein you eat influences how much nitrogen you excrete.
Makes sense.
For Steen, based on his diet, it worked out to roughly 4 grams of pure nitrogen in his urine per day.
4 grams a day.
And assuming an average output of, say, 1.5 liters a day, that's about 2.6 grams of nitrogen per liter of his urine.
Okay, so Steen crunched the annual numbers. What did he get?
His yearly total came out to about 1.4 kilograms of pure nitrogen, just from him.
Wow, 1.4 kilos. That sounds like a decent amount.
It really is. And then Professor Hendricks pointed out that Steen's father, likely eating more protein, would probably contribute significantly more, perhaps around 3 kilograms of pure nitrogen per year.
3 kilos. Okay, now we're talking. How does that translate into, fertilizer bags from the shop?
This is where it gets really interesting. Professor Hendricks did the comparison. That 3 kilograms of pure nitrogen from Dad is roughly equivalent to the nitrogen in about 5 standard bags of organic fertilizer.
5 bags? Seriously?
Yep. And those 5 bags could easily cost you, around 1,000 DKK? Maybe more.
Wow, okay. That's actual money we're just flushing away.
Exactly. And remember that 1,000 DKK is just valuing the nitrogen. Urine also contains useful amounts of phosphorus and potassium, which have their own value.
So the true value is even higher. It really changes how you think about it, doesn't it? Suddenly it's a resource. One person could fertilize a fair bit of garden space.
Definitely. Significant potential for self-reliance there.
And then the conversation shifted, didn't it? To the other side of the garden equation. All that green waste we haul away. Hedge trimmings, grass clippings, leaves.
Yeah, the stuff we diligently put in bins or take to the recycling center. Professor Hendricks made the point that we're often removing a huge amount of fertility from our gardens that way.
He gave an example, right? 5 trips a year, maybe 300 kilos per load?
Something like that, which adds up to 1,500 kilograms a ton and a half of organic matter, potential plant food, being taken out of the garden ecosystem each year.
And that stuff isn't just bulk, it's packed with nutrients itself. He gave average NPK values for composted garden waste. But what were they again?
Around 1.5% nitrogen, 0.7% phosphorus, 1.5% potassium. So NPK of 1.5, 0.7, 1.5 roughly.
Okay, so if you do the math on that 1,500 kilos,
Right.
what are we actually throwing away in terms of fertilizer elements?
Quick calculation. That's about 2.25 kilograms of nitrogen, just over a kilo of phosphorus, 1.05 kilograms, another 2.25 kilograms of potassium. Significant amounts.
Right. So wait a minute. Let's compare. A family of 3 adults may be contributing 9 kilos of nitrogen a year in their urine, and we're taking away maybe 2.25 kilos of nitrogen in the garden waste. We're flushing away more nitrogen than we're putting in the green bin.
That's often the case, yes. It's quite the paradox.
So Professor Hendricks put a price tag on that flushed nitrogen, didn't he? Using a market rate for organic nitrogen fertilizer.
Yeah, using a figure around 330 DKK per kilo of N. For that family's 9 kilos of nitrogen per year from urine, that works out to almost 3,000 DKK.
2,970 DKK, just in lost nitrogen value. Flushed away.
It's a staggering number when you see it like that.
And that's not even the whole picture, is it? Because you've got the hassle and cost of getting rid of the garden waste, the petrol for the car, wear and tear your time.
Absolutely, driving back and forth to the tip.
And then often you turn around and buy new fertilizer or compost anyway.
Exactly. You pay to remove fertility, then you pay again to bring fertility back in. When you add up the lost urine value, the transport costs, the time, the cost of buying replacement fertilizer, Professor Hendricks estimated the total wasted value for a family could easily hit 4,000 or even 5,000 DKK a year.
4,000 to 5,000 kroner, that's a lot. He joked you could almost buy a small trailer each year just with the money saved.
Yeah, it highlights what he called the illusion of the free system for waste. We think driving to the tip is free, but the whole municipal collection and processing costs a fortune, paid through taxes or fees.
Right. And the compost you might get back from the council? It's not always ideal, is it?
No. Professor Hendricks mentioned nutrients can be lost during large-scale composting. The final product might be low in nitrogen, it might not be ready when you need it early in the season, and you still have to go and collect it.
Which all seems quite inconvenient compared to just buying vegetables at the supermarket. But that has its own hidden costs too, right?
Definitely. Produce might have lower nutrient density after long transport, potential pesticide residues, shorter shelf life at home, plus the huge environmental footprint of food miles.
So the convenience isn't necessarily better value overall.
Not when you factor everything in. Professor Hendricks really laid out the true costs of the current linear system. We lose the fertilizer value of urine, we remove nutrient-rich garden waste, we buy new inputs, we potentially degrade our soil microbiome, and we rely on systems that seem easy but are actually quite resource-intensive and expensive.
Whereas the alternative, building a home nutrient cycle, composting, using the urine carefully, growing some food, that offers a whole bunch of positives.
Huge benefits. More self-sufficiency, healthier soil, which means healthier food, less waste going out, fewer expenses, a smaller carbon footprint, and you actually learn and connect more with the process.
He also made that strong point that often the cleanest, safest fertilizer is the stuff from your own garden, the organic matter you grew there.
Yes, especially compared to municipal compost, which could potentially be contaminated with things like persistent herbicides, like glyphosate, if it includes waste from treated areas.
Right, so doing it yourself gives you control. You know what's gone into it, no unwanted residues on your homegrown veg.
Exactly. You control the inputs. He suggested the big systems focus on logistics and volume, maybe losing sight of individual garden health and that connection to the land.
And he genuinely seemed to think a family could become pretty self-sufficient in nutrients with good compost and urine use, saving money, avoiding chemicals.
Yeah, a well-managed system could provide most of what a decent-sized garden needs.
He also mentioned the common sense thing about medications like antibiotics. Just use the toilet as normal then, right? Don't put that in the garden cycle.
Absolutely. It's just a temporary pause, sensible management, not a reason to abandon the whole idea. It shows the flexibility of a home system.
And he hinted at bigger picture stuff too, like what it would mean for sewage plants if lots of people started doing this.
Yeah, larger systemic questions about infrastructure and resource management. Food for thought there.
But the main point, the really striking one, was that individual saving, that 5,000 DKK a year that could fund a serious home garden project.
It really could. It makes the economics quite compelling, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Once you start seeing the value in what we normally call waste, it's both, as he said, kind of tragicomic, we've ignored it, but also really hopeful. The numbers make
They
sense.
really do. So as we wrap up this deep dive into pea and pruning, it leaves me wondering, and maybe leaves you, our listener, wondering too. What other things do we just throw away thinking they're worthless that might actually hold hidden potential for our gardens, our homes, our lives? Maybe it's worth looking at waste a bit differently. Perhaps start small with a compost bin or just think about these cycles. And on that note, I think it's definitely time to
Curious. You never quite know where these trails might lead, even the slightly unconventional ones.